Hi folks, this is all the fruit, and here I have a very rare tree. Actually, this is the only location where I've ever seen it. And it's also a pretty tasty tree, and also one of the most toxic and most dangerous trees you can find anywhere in Europe. This is Taxus baccata fructolutea. Now, Taxus baccata is the common European yew, one of the most dangerous trees of Europe for different reasons. And on rare occasions you can find a yellow fruited variety. Why is the yew so dangerous? Well, one reason is, in the Middle Ages, this stuff was about as important for warfare as metal. Why was it so important for warfare? Well, you could make the British longbow or English longbow from it. And with this longbow you could basically penetrate a lot of the troops on the battlefield. It seems to be a legend that knight's armor doesn't stand a chance against longbows made of European yew. But if you are not a knight but somebody with worse quality armor or no armor, well, this stuff will certainly kill you. Well, even in the Middle Ages, this was harvested so much on the British Isles that actually it became almost extinct. And as far as I know, the British imported about 1 million yew stems for longbow production throughout the Middle Ages. And after firearms came up, actually the longbows made of this wood were still highly superior to the primitive firearms. But this is not the only reason why this plant is so dangerous. It's also one of the most toxic plants of Europe. It's toxic for different animals. It's toxic for horses, goats or sheep. But for some reason it's not toxic for cattle. Like some other farmers around here, they lost their whole herd of sheep to this tree this year because some neighbor fed it with branches of the European yew. But in reserves where the stuff is being protected, basically cow pasture needs to be excluded or the cows will finish those trees. Why are they protected? Well, firstly, they are also some of the oldest trees in Europe. There were like rumors that there are 9,000-year-old European yews, especially in the British Isles and Western France. By now we think maybe they are more like 2,000 to 4,000 years old. That's still very, very old for European standards. Well, in the Middle Ages this tree was protected, but it was still overused for longbows. But in the 19th century, when horses were being used a lot in silviculture and longbows were a thing of the past, a lot of them were cut down, especially in Germany. Now it's a protected species in Germany. It's quite rare in the wild, but it's very common in cultivation. And also it's escaping everywhere. But the cultivated as well as the escaping trees or shrubs, basically always the pink fruited variety. This Fructolutea is horribly rare. This is really the only place I've seen it in decades. Well, it has also been used a lot to commit suicide or to poison people, or even for like those, you know, in the Middle Ages as a knight you could have a trial by combat, and if you were a lady you could basically let God judge you by eating a couple of those fruit with the seeds, and if you survived you were considered innocent in some cultures. So a really toxic plant. Even nowadays there are lots of cases of poisoning with cats and dogs and children and even adults. But it's also a very tasty plant. Actually, I was told that in Japan you find the fruit in grocery shops. So how can you eat such toxic fruit? It's basically like a fugu fish, or like the ackee fruit of Africa and Jamaica. It's an edible, very tasty food, but if you don't know how to eat it right, you die. Well, let's hope I know how to eat it right. Nice and sweet. Very slimy. The flesh of this fruit is extremely slimy and sticky, almost like glue. Hard to separate from the seeds, but after I've sucked for a couple seconds on the seeds and really reach the seeds, there is some taste, some warning, some really weak but poisonous tasting taste. So the fruit is basically just sweet. There is no trace of sourness, basically no real flavor, only sweetness. If there is a lot of sun, it's very sweet. If there is less sun, it will be bland. But once you approach the seeds, there is this pretty different taste which serves as a warning to you. The seeds, like all the other parts of the plant, are toxic. Only the fruit is edible, like the outer soft part of the fruit. So folks, if you want to try the European Yew, I'm not gonna stop you, but be very careful. Don't chew or ingest on any seeds, don't chew or ingest any leaves or other parts, the bark, the wood. Everything is toxic. The wood has a very beautiful reddish color when cut, and later it has pretty beautiful white and brown tones, so it's very ornamental too. But the fresh taste is also toxic. By the way, as you can see, this is a conifer. How does a conifer have sweet and juicy fruit? Well, basically this is not a fruit like the berry of a flowering plant. This is an aril, and you can actually see the seeds through it. Really nice fruit, but I waited till my kids turned 4 before I allowed them to eat this fruit, because then they were old enough to understand that the seeds are very toxic and that they have to spit them out. Of course, they were usually eating the red or pink fruit, but they also liked the yellow one, which tastes exactly the same. So folks, this was the very rare yellow fruited European Yew, one of the most dangerous fruit in the world. Stay tuned for a lot more fruit videos from this wonderful university campus of Heidelberg. And don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe.